Freedom, the ability to speak our minds, choose our leaders, worship freely, and pursue our own dreams. For many of us, these rights feel as permanent as the ground beneath our feet. But freedom was not always guaranteed. Nearly 250 years ago, a small group of men gathered in a hot, crowded room, knowing that what they were about to do could cost them everything. In the summer of 1776, inside a meeting hall in Philadelphia, 13 colonies stood at the edge of rebellion. Their decision would ignite a revolution and change the course of history. This is the story of how a bold declaration gave birth to a nation and to the freedoms we live with today. For over a decade, the 13 colonies had lived under growing strain. Parliament in London passed law after law, tax after tax, without the consent of those who must obey them. The Boston Massacre spilled blood on colonial streets. The Tea Act sparked defiance in Boston Harbor. The colonists had petitioned their king, sent letters, begged for compromise, but across the Atlantic, their pleas were met with silence and the tightening grip of royal authority. By June of 1776, the call for independence could no longer be ignored. In colonial America, not everyone could read or write. While many merchants, clergy, and political leaders were literate, farmers, laborers, women, and enslaved people often had limited or no formal education. This meant that important petitions, pamphlets, and declarations, like those leading up to independence, needed to be shared aloud. Delegates and scribes played a key role in this process. After drafting petitions or resolutions, they would transcribe multiple copies by hand, then deliver them to towns, churches, and assemblies. In many communities, the written words held little power on their own. They had to be spoken by someone trusted. At taverns, public squares, or outside courthouses, readers would stand before crowds and read the documents aloud. For those unable to read, this was the only way they could hear the grievances against the crown, the calls for unity, and eventually the ringing words of independence. The act of reading petitions wasn't just a formality. It became a ritual of democracy in action. Neighbors gathered, listened, debated, and sometimes signed with a simple mark if they couldn't write their names. In this way, literacy barriers didn't prevent people from engaging in the revolutionary cause. A committee of 5 men was chosen to craft the colony's case to the world. Thomas Jefferson, a young Virginian with a gift for language, took up his pen. Line by line, sentence by sentence, he poured the ideals of a people into ink, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Adams argued for clarity. Others debated each word, knowing that what they wrote was not just for their time, but for all time. On July 2nd, the Continental Congress voted for independence. 2 days later, the Declaration was approved and sent to the printer. Now came the moment of truth. Each man who signed knew what it meant. To Britain, they were committing treason, a crime punishable by death. But to the cause of liberty, they were giving everything they had. As John Hancock wrote his name large and clear, he is said to have declared, "So the king may read it without his spectacles." The Declaration of Independence was more than a severing of ties. It was a vision, a promise that freedom belonged to all. Its words would echo in France, in Latin America, a movement for civil rights and equality.
When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government and to provide new gods for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having indirect object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish their right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative power, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of land. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amounts and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burned our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the work of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive on the high seas, to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections among us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an indistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of a right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do, and for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
In the summer heat of 1776, they signed their names to an idea that had never truly existed before, a nation built not on kings or bloodlines, but on the belief that all people are created equal, and that their rights come not from governments, but from the Creator himself. They knew the cost could be everything: their homes, their fortunes, their lives, but they signed anyway. 2.5 centuries later, the words they wrote still echo across a nation. In every vote cast, every voice raised in protest or praise, every dream freely pursued. The freedoms we live with today began with a single daring declaration July 4, 1776, the beginning of American independence.